Hello, dear viewers. So to those of you returning from my Baddington tape analysis, I mentioned that there existed a version of William that deep-fried a baby. And today, you will finally get context on what kind of VHS tape insanity that came from. 12 Man is a VHS horror creator who hasn't uploaded much FNaF VHS content that, he's regarded as canon, as of this recording, but still managed to reach a new level of horror with their depiction of William. While Baddington will forever hold the top spot of my favorite depiction of an alternate FNaF universe, this one is a close second. Let's get right into it because we got almost 50 minutes of stuff to unravel here, so fasten your fast belts. Also, quick note before we begin, as I'm writing the script, 12 Man actually joined my Discord, so he's likely going to get a first-hand seat to correct any mistakes that I make throughout this analysis. Well, that's a risk worth taking. Roll film! The video begins with security camera footage of what we can only assume is the first Freddy Fazbear's location as depicted in FNaF 1. It's pretty dimly lit, so you can't really notice all too much except for the animatronics and the occasional flickering light. The only thing that's really off, per se, is in the final shot, which shows something bright being turned on. The camera glitches with signal being lost before we're able to fully make out what the source of the light is. Pretty normal stuff so far, right? Well, get ready for that to change dramatically in the next minute. The scene then switches to show a much more lit up and detailed version of the establishment, the date showing that it's currently May 12th, 1985. 2 years until the Pride of 87. We can hear footsteps off screen as the camera shows more of the building's layout, and man, I can't get enough of the vibe they went for here. It's like a mix of a game-accurate location mixed with a movie-accurate location, and I love it so much. Now, originally it bothered me that the animatronic models weren't custom or changed much, if at all. It simply just stayed unwithered, but after a while it grew on me seeing the OG looks to these guys after being exposed to so much peak Baddington. Almost refreshing in a way to be back here to our roots. We hear a door slam off screen, signaling the fact that whoever was walking around previously has now gone into a different room. It's pretty obvious that the person who was walking around was William, and if it wasn't obvious enough, the next scene makes it certain that it's him. The lights are turned off for the night, and then we hear movement in the room adjacent to the main stage before... If you listen closely, you can hear the sounds of something being opened before the crying starts. This implies that William kidnapped a baby, then locked it in a soundproof hidden container, or maybe even inside an unseen animatronic in the backstage, and now has opened it to reveal the infant whose crying is finally audible. Then, after a few moments of the crying continuing on and footsteps walking over towards the kitchen, it happens. What? Wow. Okay. I don't think I got a joke to lighten the mood here. That was wow. That was pretty fucked up. Now the screaming and sizzling on its own is bad enough, but let me make this worse for you by going in depth on the details shown here. Despite the fact we never see the remains of the baby or even see this horrific act happen, we get to feel every bit of the pain that we would have felt if we had seen it with our own eyes. Part of the reason why that is due to how the animatronics are physically shown reacting from the screaming. You can only imagine what pain the child souls inside the four animatronics went through before their own deaths, and considering how casually William goes through with deep frying a baby of all things, yeah, you can only imagine. The way they violently twitch and glance around really gives you the feeling that they want to do something, but they just can't. Whether that be just because they aren't able to move as easily as shown in the games, or worse, they're potentially bolted to the stage in this universe, as a lot of IRL establishments used to do that with their own animatronics, including Chuck E. Cheese, RIP Cheese Gang. Another thing that's a fun screwed up detail about all this is that it might be game accurate with how they did this. The catch-in camera in FNaF 1 is shown to be always offline throughout the game. This has changed in FNaF in real time, which I plan on doing a stream and review about in the future as well, but let's focus on the deep fryer, okay? Okay. It's almost done cooking. It then pans over to the kitchen, showing bloody knives and cleavers, which frickin' hell, more implication on the suffering of that baby that went through before the end. The camera follows the blood trail as was shown the deep fryer. Somehow, the fact that it's obviously based on a McDonald's deep fryer with the beeps and the instructions on the screens makes this all the worse and more threatening. Hope you enjoy the next 20-piece McNugget you buy, you monsters. The scene continues on, with the fans in the kitchen being turned on, probably to get rid of the abysmal smell of burning flesh that's filled the kitchen by now, and then text appears on the screen. Now, Most of the time in FNaF VHS tapes, William commits his murders out of either spite, revenge, or purely because he's a psychopath. Or a sociopath, depends on the iteration. But this version of William seems to be more interested in more than that. This William is working for someone else, who wants dead children for whatever reason. Knowing FNAF's absolute insane lore when it comes to the power potential of dead children, it could literally be for anything. From powering a freaking undead child to powering a toaster oven, who fucking knows. The scene changes again and we get a time skip to 6 days later. We're at the law enforcement building in Bright. Holy shit, actual human models of VHS tapes? We are being treated today, folks. A woman named Jennifer Hunter enters room 165 in order to speak with Mr. Oswald. The main conversation that they have here is about the obvious missing children problem the town's been having, which is all focused on Freddy Fazbear's. During this conversation, we learned that there's been a lot of controversy stemming from the establishment and past instances that have happened involving it and its owner. Gee, wonder why. One thing I want to stop on real quick is the chalkboard shown in the background of this shot right here, because there is so much to talk about on this chalkboard alone, so we're just going to stick with the main points, but feel free to point out what I'm wrong about in the comments below. I know some of you will. First thing, there's multiple points on here involving FDA charges involving the food served at Freddy's, including evidence of worms, stale product, and also raccoon feces. Now, I'm doing some MatPat level of reaching here, considering the fact that this tape opened with what it opened with. There's a slight implication here on why the food is being investigated so much by the FDA. William had to hide the useless parts of that baby's body somewhere, after all. Second thing, the board says William's house has been investigated multiple times with them finding pretty much nothing. This either means that in this universe, William doesn't keep anything sus at his house, or he's just way better at hiding things than he is in other timelines. Third thing, that's not how you spell crisis. Fourth thing, William is absolutely knocking off employees who snoop around too much based on the fact that there's people other than the children declared missing. Fifth and final thing, Brighton's Great Abduction is a thing in this timeline that William is obviously the one behind. God, as if the UK wasn't shit enough without there being massive strings of missing children. Mr. Oswald and Jennifer then go into detail on the classified case file on William, which tells us a lot of necessary stuff that'll probably be important later. From this, we learn that William is already known by the community as a creep and a weirdo. Okay, so you guys knew that this guy was sketchy, yet you still brought your families to the place he owns? This really seems like your now dead children are more your fault than his. Anyways, another thing we learn is that Henry Emily does exist in this universe. Finally, some Henry content of VHS tape. Excited to see where this goes. So he tried to unalive himself and is eventually again. God damn it! Apparently this version of William also has a second friend in the form of a guy named Roman Harris, who exposed himself to a bunch of kindergartners, then beat him up. Christ, William, get more mentally stable friends. This is why you're being investigated for child murder, mate. Moving on, William apparently was very close to the children, almost eerily. Very subtle comparison to the FNaF 2 phone call guys. This is brushed off as him just simply being a children's establishment owner, which at least makes some sense. Then we get more info on the Brighton abduction I mentioned earlier, which apparently happened between 1983 and 1984. Y'all know the story by now. 6 children disappeared and got murked one by one, Charlie Emily being the only confirmed name that we got so far. After some confirmation that the bite of 83 is a thing in this timeline, we get everyone's favorite topic, poisonings. Apparently, my guy William decided to put not only parasites in the food, but genetically modified parasites that purposely were made to survive as long as possible in harsh conditions. William is just looking more and more like a supervillain in this canon at this point. This info dump ends with the final note that William has spent confirmed time in prison at this point, at least 1 year of jail time in total. Normal stuff, right? Oh, hey, I forgot to mention one last thing. William being sentenced to only 1 year in prison caused fucking riots in the streets. Not small ones either. I'm talking fires being started at Afton's house, explosives going off, crowds going up against riot shields, crazy stuff. This William is just on some other level of crack in this universe if the public hates him this much, and we haven't even got to see the guy yet. Only 15 minutes in, folks. We aren't even close to being done. So the basic idea of the conversation is this. These two both believe that William is innocent despite so much evidence proving otherwise, with them also believing that there might be foul play from a third party.
Look, are you sure this is a good idea?
Trust me, it's a foolproof plan. That man may be new in the restaurant industry, he may make mistakes, but he's not a kidnapper, murderer, a poisoner. I interviewed him earlier. He seemed very genuine and honest in what he was saying, and I know when someone's lying to me.
This is a wild conclusion to get from all this information, but whatever, guys. Also, we get a nod toward the Walton files.
Remember that burger restaurant with similar looking animatronics, with the rabbit one as a main. I can't recall how it was named. Never mind. Something burger at Bond's thing or something like that.
Okay, if that's this tape's way of saying that all of that LSD content overdose is canon to this universe, I am all for that. It only makes sense at this point. This universe is already cracked as hell. Now anyway, seeing as Oswald and Jennifer have come to this conclusion, what do you think they're gonna do as a plan of action? Oh well, they decide that William should be transferred to a correctional facility instead of prison, taught to be different in life, and then released back into the wild with a hefty load of cash and a new house for good measure under a different net. Holy plot convenience, Batman. Brighton needs a new police department. These guys are so shit at their jobs.
But what if he reopens his restaurant and the same events happen all over again?
Not possible.
Then William opened a new establishment. Just kidding, we're not there yet. We then get yet another time skip ahead to a whopping 24 years later in early October. From this point onwards, we take the POV of somebody who has a friend called Adam who has sent multiple VHS tapes to us that they found at a flea market, who passed them on to us due to not wanting them around because they're pretty screwed up with the amount of context regarding William's exploits. Are we still following along, class? No? Alright then, into the first recovered recording we go. Now, here's where shit gets good. To give you an idea of what you're about to watch unfold, imagine Five Nights at Freddy's, right? Now imagine it grew legs and walked over to a bar one day. It got super smashed at everything. In this moment of drunk vulnerability, they happen to meet a new best friend. Breaking Bad. I wish I could say I was kidding, but that's literally how this plays out. And as an unironic Breaking Bad fan, I think it kind of works. We get our first look at this universe's William, and Christ, he looks like Norman Bates with a purple sweater. That smile is creepy as hell, though I do like the color choice of the sweater. It's really subtle. Honestly, I like this look for him way more than I like how Scrimpus portrayed him. You know, the pre-groomer. Anyways, William is currently calling his BFF Carl, who in a surprise turn of events is William's murder partner. Now, this is a pretty new concept that nobody's ever done in the series. Done well. Now, for a summary of what William and Carl are doing, apparently these two are working together to murder children for an unknown client who is probably paying them a lot of money. Hot damn, I love this concept. Murder partners using the Fazbear name to commit crimes and hide the evidence with a lot of yelling at each other in between reminds me of the good old days of getting the evil endings of Day Shift 1 and 2. We don't talk about the evil ending of Day Shift 3. That shit's unnerving. Anyways, William informs Carl that one of the cooks in the kitchen found out and they snitched to the police, so they have to cover up their tracks. Oh my god, this really is just Breaking Bad with more dead children. Anyways, long story short, William goes on a Walter White tirade about how they're gonna get busted if the evidence is still around that's tied to them is still around. He orders Carl to dispose of it all, but the way William goes about it is very frantic and needlessly convoluted.
I want you to do exactly what I say. I want you to get rid of any evidence we may have left. You're the only one who has these jars with worms right now. Drop the contents of these jars into the acid tanks you have in your basement. After emptying these jars, wash them. Then go deep into the St. Juana forest, smash them inside a plastic bag, and bury them at least 7 to 10 feet down.
Then we get confirmation that the evidence really was in the house's basement all along, and it needs to be removed before it actually can be found. William, seeing a lack of options, begins going into damage control mode.
You know what? Screw the client. Take Cassidy out of the freezer, drop her into the acid tank, cut contacts with the client, and dump her as well.
Okay, you aren't slick, buddy. That was a hard custody right there. Now that we got her as a confirmed kill, I'm wondering if this is just going to be a reference to the game lore, or if that's a fact that's going to be or stick around as a possible spirit who will play a bigger part later. Maybe she'll cameo as a pack of nuggets in a freeze frame shot. Also, the fact that they were keeping a child's body in a freezer has me theorizing about the client now. See, that's common practice with organ dealers on the black market. Keep organs cool so they can stay fresh for possible sale. Don't ask why I know so much about that. Is this all a conspiracy that William is just the tip of? Or is there a huge market in Brighton for child body party? God, why is Britain so shit? This is also an event that's a catalyst for what happened at the beginning of this tape with a deep fryer, as it's obvious this act was done to hide the remaining evidence. Now, something I want to point out now that we have more context is that based on the dates used in the last few time skips, we can determine that at this point of the deep fryer incident, William was already in prison, which means that Carl was likely the one who did it. Damn, guess I just clickbaited my audience. My bad. I don't regret anything. The conversation seems to calm down between Will and Carl until the latter remembers a small, crucial detail that the viewers too might have forgotten as well, seeing as, we've kind of been focused on the deep fried child and all.
Oh, fuck, William, the animatronics. We still have the animatronics to get rid of.
So, we got confirmations that the animatronics are still stuffed in this timeline, despite the fact William and Carl have been shown to sell the children's bodies for whatever purpose. Though it's possible based on from earlier scenes that this was done to simply hide the bodies until they were able to be moved elsewhere. Who knows? But it doesn't matter either way, because it turns out William thought that out too. He dismantled the robots and has somehow defied the rules of reality to not end up in a springlock suit in the process of doing so. The plan Williams concocted is actually one that some lore theorists assume William went through in the actual game's lore. He plans to get convicted of the smaller crimes, which, as shown before, will only land him a single year behind bars. There is no evidence he killed any kids, or even actually put the poison in the food in the first place. He's simply being put away for food negligence. William hopes this will distract the public enough to take the eyes off Carl, so he can continue knocking off kids behind the scenes until William is released. Lord, it's like I'm watching a true crime show, the fuck? The footage then cuts out and it returns around 2 hours later. At this point, Carl is shown driving out into the wild as opposed to the child murder evidence. While we're on this peaceful and totally innocent drive, I wanted to take a moment to explain why this plot is working with the setting so well. Most FNaF stories revolve solely around the haunted animatronics and the tragedy around their deaths, and the horror of the murders. But this tape goes in a far different direction, honestly one that works in its favor. It's really fun seeing William's side of the story, with him managing to stay out of the public's eye and keep his murders secrets, while still being absolutely sociopathic. Add on to the fact that this plot has the same vibes as Breaking Bad, with Carl as a less moral Jesse Pinkman sort of character. It's just a wonder to watch unfold. Anyways, as the bumpy road trip continues, Carl eventually gets the notice of a police cruiser that happened to be passing by. Naturally, the guy who has evidence of child murder and body disposal in his trunk isn't too calm about the fact that he's being pulled over to the side of the road by the authorities. But not to raise suspicion by speeding off, Carl reluctantly follows the officer's orders and pulls to the side of the road. The cop asks Carl to step out of the vehicle and hand over the keys. Even though you're kind of rooting for this guy to be caught, the scene still feels really tense throughout this entire exchange.
Hello, officer. I'm doing just fine. Great to hear. Well, my name is Officer Jacob Clyde. Could you hand over the keys and step out of the car?
All right, but the keys? Why?
It's just a safety precaution. Normal control procedure. Don't worry.
Just want to say it's a real red flag if a cop says that to you in real life. Like, seriously, Jesus Christ. Carl, probably shedding bricks at this point, lets the cop, identified as Officer Jacob Clyde, investigate his vehicle, specifically the back due to a light going off. Now, considering the fact that there's human remains in the back, this is not a very good turn of events for Carl. Eventually, Officer Clyde takes too much of an interest in the stash once it's discovered, and Carl does the only thing he can think of to get himself out of this situation.
Listen, I was disposing some old meat from my store, right? And I tried dissolving most of it in hydrochloric acid. But there's still little bits and pieces of the old lamb inside, so it's not gonna smell very good.
That's, quite a bizarre way of disposing old meats. I'm not gonna lie to you, you've kind of surprised me. It's like in movies with dead bodies. Am I right?
It is surprising how the cop never thought to pat down Carl after letting him out of the vehicle. Carl then drags the cop's body away off screen, with him putting a plastic bag over the face, implying that the officer isn't fully dead as of yet, and that Carl isn't taking any chances. He then either dumps him in a nearby ditch or shoves the body in the back of the trunk with the rest of the remains to dispose of it properly. The second option makes more sense, especially with how fast Carl returns to pick up the camera. This is where the first recording ends, and obviously not disturbed enough, the POV decides to play the next video recording for some godforsaken reason. We then get treated to another phone call between Will and Carl, which seems to be set after Carl manages to successfully dispose of the evidence. But William has news to share with Carl. News that we, the viewer, already know from earlier about in the video.
Carl, I spoke to an agent. Due to the riots that's happening right now, I'm gonna have to vanish out of town.
Okay, but, I'm not sure you're allowed to tell me that through the prison phone.
No, you fucking idiot. I'm not using a prison phone. I'm not that stupid. I got my hands on a guard's cell phone.
Okay, wow, Brighton continues to be shit. Child murderers, dumb cops, and cops who just casually carry their phones on the job on top of that. Yikes, good day to be an American. Anyways, as the conversation continues on, William brings up the topic of the current state of his home, which, as you saw earlier, isn't doing too hot. Well, it is, but not in a good way.
I don't have much time, though, but hear me out. I've heard about my house getting burned down. Is that true?
Yep. Up in flames within an hour.
Excellent. Citizens, destroy the evidence they were looking for.
I don't know about any of you, but the way he laughs here is rather chilling. It's not dramatic enough to be the laugh of some 80s supervillain, which William is obviously aiming for, but it's real enough to give you a sense of dread and unease. I think it's the wheezing that does it for me. William is forced to ditch the cop's phone as the guard returns, but he gives Carl information to wait for somebody to approach him, starting the sentence with "ring-a-ring-a-rosies." If somebody does do this, Carl is ordered to trust them completely. The phone call ends and we're instantly shoved into a throwback of a 1980s commercial reel. It almost makes you forget about all the sins against humanity we've seen in the last half hour. After a few normal, kind of nostalgic commercials, we get treated to one for a new Fazbear location. And a title drop for Freddy's Jr.'s, we get a glance at William's new identity, face, and name. That being Walter Brown, the new face of the animatronic entertainment industry. Okay, they know what they were doing with that fucking name. There's no way they did that by accident with this kind of plotline. The video then concludes by the POV of the person at the computer deciding to delete the 2 video files, which, Jesus Christ, is the most dumb thing you could possibly do in this situation. But I do have a theory on why the person did this. From the way the story is going, I have a feeling that this might actually end on William Afton getting away with the crimes. Now, this could imply that the POV we've had in the 2009 sections of this video is of either Carl's or William's. I'm leaning towards it being Carl though. This is backed up by the fact that the last shot of the video we get is of a phone going off in what we can only assume is the house's kitchen. This is likely William finally making his return in Carl's life under his new name, Walter Brunt. God damn that name. Or this POV could just be some random guy or girl because of information I might have glossed over. Who knows? With the second part coming out sometime hopefully in early 2025, I got a lot of hype to see where this story goes. Maybe it'll even be already out by the time this video is finished and posted. That's all we got for now though. But I am looking forward to covering the next part of this series. Go subscribe to 12 Man obviously, links and names will be everywhere in the description. Take care everyone, don't eat that chicken nugget you're thinking about right now, and goodbye!